Hello, everyone, and happy fall if you're living in the Northern Hemisphere. And welcome to this edition of the Two World Podcast. And before we begin, I would like to certainly congratulate our hosts on a milestone recently. For those of you that watch regularly, they concluded recently their 100th episode of the Two World Podcast. So congratulations, guys, and thank you as always for allowing me the privilege of being part of this every now and again. So hello once again, and we'd like to introduce our two co-hosts. First, we have
Hi everyone, I'm Jacob.
And I am Barney.
all right, and we hope you enjoy this most recent foray into an episode of a 1990s television show, which was titled Northern Exposure.
Yes, I'm really excited about today's episode, and as we'll find out, it is about a very personal story for Joel Fleischman and about grieving the death of his uncle. But just before we jump into any specifics, I wanted to ask Barney and Ken, when we're talking about ideas and which episode to focus on next, can you say a little something about what made this particular episode the selection for today? Like, why is it on one of your list of top episodes? Was there something that, drew it to the fore for you?
Yeah, okay, I'll go first. Yeah, that's a great question. Maybe one of the reasons why I really like and appreciate this episode is because we see a real different side of Joel in this one, and it's nice seeing him vulnerable and open up a bit, and we see like we see a slice of him outside of being a doctor and outside of his relationship, his kind of his unhappiness or whatnot, how he wishes he were anywhere but Sicily. And then here we see, a real genuine human side of him in his story. And I also that two other stories that go on are just so much fun too. Here this episode probably has the most lines for Elaine Miles, for Marilyn, ever, and then also it's an episode with Bernard. So anytime you get Bernard and Chris together, that's always a lot of fun too.
Mhm. Sure. Yeah, Barney, I really concur. My own reasons are very much in line with yours. Joel's genuine side really comes to the forefront in this episode. Um, there's a moment when Maurice, in talking to him, uh, he's Maurice is the guy who references that you've sort of been held captive here. Usually, Joel is the guy that constantly reminds all those around him within earshot that he's in captivity here. So yeah, that was a wonderful twist. And for me personally, one of the magic things about this program is I learned something. I'm sure when I watched it the first time, just to watch what Joel is involved with the funeral prayer and so on, um, I learned something because I was not familiar.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think I really learned a lot too. And then while I was watching the most recent time, I thought, oh, I wonder if maybe Jacob knows a little bit more background about some of these things. I really think it would be so cool if he had anything to bring to this, not necessarily knowing that you do or putting you on the spot, but I thought
Mhm.
this is extra special. Maybe probably it really resonated with Jacob more than anything, just as with his background, having studied Hebrew and whatnot, and then of course religion in general. And so I'm curious to hear Jacob's take on it, regardless.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, I didn't know very much about the traditional Jewish morning prayer. I did some research on it for today's episode, but for our listeners, that's one of the centerpieces, called the Kaddish. And Joel would like to share this prayer. And in order to do so, he needs a minyan, which is, in some traditions, it's 10 Jewish males, although in Reform Judaism, it can also be just 10 individuals who are Jewish. But yeah, the prayer evidently is was originally written in Aramaic, interestingly enough, but is still recited, um, today, and it is a lot of statements extolling God's name and kind of taking grounding in who God is in the midst of the loss of the loved one, like trusting in God's presence to
Mm.
sustain and ground the person who's mourning, and that God's name would be held, be exalted throughout the journey of mourning. And then, as I was reading about the Kaddish, evidently by some mourners, it's said um, over a period of months. Like I mean, they say it initially with the minyan, the group, but then it's something they recite on their own as well, in their own spirituality for, I think it was like 2/3 of a year or something in some cases. But it's this really fascinating
Wow.
prayer that is like very comforting. And I think there is some other term when they think of the loved one on anniversaries. um, it's just one of those things. I think every probably religious tradition has a way of marking not only the when the person um, first passes, but then in subsequent years. I think the term I saw on this one website was the Jahreszeit, which is the German term for the year time, the time of year when they remember the mourner down the road. So I think the Kaddish is kind of like a launching point out into a little bit longer of a journey of grief that might involve reciting the prayer further down the road and then remembering the person on anniversaries. But oh my, it was so rich and fascinating to read more about it. And so I'm excited to talk with you about the whole journey that the town goes on and helping Joel try to realize this, and then the twists and turns that that takes, and then the end of the episode, which I will not spoil until we've had a chance to talk more about this because it's so wonderful. So yeah, what are your thoughts, Barney or Ken, as you think about that part of the episode, that storyline of Joel's desire to be able to say the Kaddish, because I he was not able to travel to Florida where the funeral is. It's just not possible for him. So this is the next option for him, is the way to honor his uncle, who I think we're told is kind of like a parent to him, right? His It really nurtured him when he was growing up and
Mhm.
supported him and was there for him during formative times, like his bar mitzvah when he became like seen as an adult in his Jewish tradition. And was it his first Yankees game, or at the different pivotal moments?
Yes.
But yeah, what are your thoughts about um, Joel's mourning and what he hopes to do in this part of the episode?
Mm. Well, Jacob, thank you for the background. I'm thinking of 10 more questions as you went through that about Aramaic and things I don't know. But just watching Joel, Manny is bit referenced at other times throughout the
Mhm.
course of the program. And so I like the fact that it isn't like, let's just write this one and bring in a character called Manny. We know that Manny is important in Joel's life, and he really wants to do honor to Manny's memory, and has done so effectively. I'm not going to go any further just yet. Barney, your thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of liked how they really made this accessible for all viewers, and I think one of the ways that was, Ed, I think was it Ed who asked him, why do you need a minion? And then Joel said, I don't know, you need 9 people to play baseball and 10 Jews in a room to say Kaddish. And then it just,
Perfect.
yeah, I mean, it just kind of brought it down to the kind of everyone's level that we could all get into it. We're not thinking this is going to be a real heavy episode, about this or that, but we can all kind of, we're already feeling drawn in to this, with a lot of human side to it and some humor. And I appreciated, I'm thinking of 2 scenes near the beginning there. The one was when Maurice had everyone together for, like, starting the operations, and he's talking about how do we know what, if someone's Jewish or not. And then when he's talking about circumcision, there's this real funny thing if you're watching carefully where Shelley is taking notes about that being important. And, and so we're wondering, is she thinking back to her past if she knows anybody nearby, or is she thinking from now on I'll try to see if these people are Jewish or not? I'm not sure. But that one was very, very, I thought that was a good joke. And then Holly like kind of just like shakes his head at her. And then um but then I really liked the part where Joel pulls Maurice aside in the radio station and says, talking, he kind of references about the contention that they've had so far, and then nothing has kind of prepared him for this gesture, and how Joel realizes that Maurice won't admit it, and Maurice won't admit it, that it's a real, genuine, loving act that Maurice is doing on Joel's behalf. But Maurice kind of paints it as well. We need a healthy, sane, emotionally stable doctor. So that's why we're doing this. But I really, really like
Yeah, I
that.
was going to throw out before I forget the theme of community, which we'll talk about at the end of the program, I'm sure. But even in Maurice's case, where it looked like a military staff meeting, with the manila envelopes, and here's the Maurice at his leadership best, it's still the theme of community has begun.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, Jacob.
Oh, no, no. I love what you're saying there. That's a good point. I was just going to mention that as Joel is about to leave Maurice, I love that he hugs him, and Maurice kind of looks
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable, but he still hugs him, and he kind of,
Mm-hmm.
he still pats him on the back, like, all right, this, I understand that you're trying to convey that, even if they didn't have words. And I thought that was
Right.
very, very
Mm-hmm.
special. But no, I think it's wonderful that you highlight community because
Yeah.
um, that becomes, I think, the central theme, not only in terms of like what is a minion, like what does it mean for a group to gather to bear witness um, to Joel's prayer of mourning, but also like in a broader sense, like what does it mean to be a part of a community in general, and who are the people that you want with you in a time of life where you are um, grieving, and so it kind of, there's the religious definition of minion, the 10 males in the Jewish tradition, but then Joel is going to go on a journey to kind of define his own sense of community and what is important to him in his period of grieving. I just love that in this episode that he is asking that question, like, yes, I understand what the religious definition is, but like, what does it mean to me to have people around me when I'm grieving the death of this
Yeah,
loved one? Like
sure.
what is most important to me? And that's kind of a fascinating journey he goes on. So
Yeah. And we're in season 4 of 6, where we've really been able to watch Joel's progression and character development and so on. Where and we know with Joel, it's 3 steps ahead and 2 steps back at times, but this one just seems so pivotal. Joel really started to feel, I think, all through his being that he was really part of this community, regardless of how much he still wanted to leave and depart this.
Wonderful the way that you put that. And then when you think about that, and I appreciate that you picked up on, or you pointed out, because I didn't dawn on me until you said that the theme, or the concept of community had a real starting point in this episode, with everyone getting together, and everyone pulling in the same direction. No one thought, oh, it can't be done. No one thought, oh, how much of my own time am I going to have to give up for this? Everyone really rallied behind
Mhm.
this plan that Marie set up. And then, yeah, you made a great point that earlier, Joel probably, a few seasons earlier, Joel probably would have been reluctant to include some of these yokels, as he might have called them, in sharing with this very important time with him. But isn't it great how we see the plan succeeding to find, 10 members of the Jewish faith getting together, coming in, to support Joel. And then he has that dream. Um, it's just, yeah. Do you guys, before we talk, say more, before I say more, I'm curious, how did you feel about the dream? maybe Jacob, what were your first impressions of that too?
Well, I think the show has played around with dreams in interesting ways throughout the seasons.
Yes.
And a lot of times it is processing what the character is experiencing in real life in a kind of creative way with a twist. And so, yeah, it was Joel working through the question of the the minion, like what does it mean to have these nine other people join me that I don't know, even though they um, are part of the Jewish tradition, like they're connected that way, but he doesn't really know them personally. So I think the dream is his kind of coming to terms with that in a comical twist, being in the old West,
Yes.
and they ride in on the horses and like they're gonna get this, job done. And I think it
Levi Strauss.
yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly. And I
Have Torah will travel.
And I think that the kind of ridiculousness of that scene probably reveals to Joel that in his own mind, he thinks that the fact that he's gathering with these, there would be nine strangers, helps him realize, this doesn't define what real community is to me. If he were in his home, synagogue where he'd grown up, he would have known the minion, like they would have known, lived life together and had relationship. But in this type of scenario where they would just be strangers drawn from all different parts of Alaska, and it just yeah, I think that his to answer your question, I was at first I was trying to interpret, and then I was like, oh wait, this dream makes perfect sense for where Joel goes next with his conclusion about community. And so yeah, I liked the dream sequence. It was fun. What did you think?
Mhm. Um, uh, it served the purpose of saying to Joel, maybe this isn't the way to go, even though everything inside my faith says that you need
Mm.
10 people of the Jewish faith, but maybe this isn't it.
Yeah, I like how he he keeps insisting, but I don't know how to ride. I don't know how to ride, and it's interesting that these nine
Right?
Jewish people in his dream from, you know, Yahuta and what is it, little big mocker and and Buck Shane, and
Yeah.
they're there to get this job done, and we see his reluctance, I don't know how to ride, I don't know how to ride, and I think that probably struck the chord with Joel, during the dream, what his subconscious was telling him, that, you know, they, what would they say? They said, we've got strudel and it won't keep, but it was just, and then I wonder if they mentioned the Coen brothers. I wonder if those two characters were the real actual Coen brothers, or if they were just putting the names out there, because it could have been, it was in the
Could
early
have been.
90s, before they were
Yeah.
really making movies seriously. But
Yeah.
um, and then I thought, boy, with all of this effort that Joel has seen Maurice put into it, and I think he knows that, right? I think one of the people, the guy from Shaker Heights, the lumberjack, he's interested in the money that he's getting paid. So Joel knows that Maurice is really working hard and incentivizing this a lot. And
Mhm.
it takes a lot of courage, I think, from him to just tell Maurice that it's not going to work. And I understand Maurice's reaction, but wow, I think Joel took a huge step in that part. I think in that scene we see his character really, for a really great reason, um, to say that he just doesn't feel comfortable with saying, Kaddish with these Jewish people that Maurice has helped to bring together for him.
Wonderfully said. Mhm.
Mhm.
Is it too soon to talk about the final scene? Or
I think
because
we
we
Yeah,
do have
should.
other aspects of the plot
yeah,
to
right,
bring in,
yeah, but
the lighter
yeah.
aspects, but
that final scene was just so neat. I like how we had kind of a brief glimpse earlier on where he's remembering Manny in his home, and Maggie comes in and he shows her, the family album, and he shows her his prayer shawl, um, to see how much that his Uncle Manny really meant to him. And then, yeah, at the very end in the church, then with everyone together, it was so nice the way that even just the calmness, and the seriousness through which Joel was inviting everyone in to take part of the service, and how everyone responded to.
Mm, there it is. Yeah. How everyone responded was just magnificently done. Everyone in their own way, absolutely sincere and lost in meditative moments, gesturing. For our viewers, um, we have a lot of cultural diversity in the program to begin with, and there was in that room. And uh,
You know,
Jacob, your view as a first time
yeah.
experience.
Well, yeah, it seemed like definitely a holy moment, and Joel has realized that this is his community and he's close to them and that they are welcomed in by him in this moment of honoring his uncle. And so that was very powerful. And they received that and they're present. And they probably, so many of them that would be the first time hearing that type of prayer and seeing him put on that prayer shawl. Would they be seeing him in a new light? And I love that moment. And it reminded me of how the show has taken other needs of characters, even faith needs or religious needs, and found creative expressions for those. Like the time when Shelley really wanted to have, was it a special Catholic service? And
Mhm.
then Holling sings for her in this chapel, and it's not what she thought it would be, but it fills that need, And this is kind of the same thing. Like the community gathers not in the traditional way, but in the way that fills the need for Joel. And it's just kind of fascinating to me that show has is in touch with that, because in life sometimes that's how it is, and you're surprised by what emerges, and it's different than what you would anticipate, but it is still very meaningful and powerful and true. So I loved the ending. I thought it was one of my favorite moments of any of the episodes we've watched up to this point, is him saying that prayer and everybody sitting
It's
around.
huge.
I thought, yeah, it's huge. It's huge for that character and for that community. And it's just a very special moment. So I
Yeah.
loved it.
And the tiny bits of humor are still all, Ed, uh, Dr. Fleischman, we should all wear beanies, instead of saying yarmulke, even because he's not going to know the word. And
Uh,
Joel doesn't isn't phased. He just responded so appropriately. It's okay, Ed, because Ed is not meaning to be funny. Probably, well, he wasn't. Yeah. Uh, yeah, and even seeing Maurice, I like how they shot Maurice, who generally is a let's get it over with kind of guy, deep in thought. Yeah, all good, as you said, Jacob. It's just mm,
so there's the tradition, the wrestling with a sense of community, this unexpected ending. And maybe that could be a little bit of a transition piece to one of the other parts of the story. There is another tradition that has developed, a conflict between two families that plays out in various um, tiffs and um, fights and you know times of conflict. And the question for that part of the story is, will that tradition continue? Or will that change? What's that going to look like, in the future? And so we kind of have the Chris with his brother. Can you remind me of the name of his brother? I believe
Bernard.
Bernard, right? Um, welcoming a couple of guests into the radio station, and then maybe I'll hand it over to one of you to explain what the guests want to do and what that's about.
Yeah, there was an earlier episode that we haven't seen in this season where there's a court order, I guess, or they're trying to get Chris sent back to
Yeah.
West Virginia
Extraditing.
and extradite him for breaking his parole. And then everyone's like, why is this now? And then Chris looks at the order and it says, oh, see here, this person, so and so Miller, that's why he's like, the long Miller Stevens feud. And um so he said, oh, that's, Millers and Stevens have been fighting since, before, Civil War or something like that. And yeah, and then they mentioned, they said, we heard that you dodged, so and so's, extradition, and we're here to settle the score. And um, yeah, I like how it just Chris is so excited about this and just really energized and looking forward to it and is still, congenial with the two guys. He's like, you guys getting enough to eat? You feeling okay? Find a safe place to stay, And then oh, what a perfect gift, he says, that Bernard, oh man, the perfect timing of Bernard being here. It's just, it's fate that you're here for this, Bernard, to take a part of this, this battle. And I remember the first time I saw this, the things that I was thinking and going through. How about for you, Jacob? Did you think that that this fight was gonna go through?
Well, at first, I thought this is so quirky. Like they have to be referring to something else other than like a physical fist fight. Like maybe they're it's like
Oh,
secret language for some type of like card game or some type of like,
Oh,
like athletic thing. But then, you see Chris training with a punching bag or he's doing boxing routines. I'm like, no, this is a physical fight. And the more, he talks with Bernard about it, the more crazy and absurd it sounds. He's like, oh yeah, the pain is good. The pain is real, but it can be good. And
yeah,
Bernard's
I know.
like, I don't know. Like, I've
I,
never been in a fight. Like, are you sure? And he's like, oh yeah,
I,
this is. He's like really trying to sell him on. So yeah, I was like, I was incredulous. Like, is this real? Is this really happening? But it was a fun twist and turn in the episode. And Chris is always so enthusiastic about whatever he's doing that he totally
mhm.
totally throws himself into this, 100%. So yeah.
I think his enthusiasm that you mentioned, Jacob, is sort of the link that allows this to be acceptable within the realm of what Chris is. He's this philosophical, um, um, reverend on the radio and in his life, but yet this works for Chris because we know his background and the episode about trying to extradite him, it all fits, you know. Oh, giving pain
yeah.
and receiving pain. Like this will convince Bernard.
I know.
I'm a CPA. Put your hand back in that pickle jar.
Because yeah, and
Oh my.
he, yeah, like you said, it's just true to Chris, where it made me think of the spring break episode where he's like, that wild nature, of the
Mhm.
the beast that's in you, and he said, oh, it is primitive. It's very primitive, it's
Mhm.
right brain all the way, he says. And I love the scene. I love the way they shot it when he's like, you can see that fist coming right at you and you can count every hair on the knuckles. And just the way that they filmed that was really good. And
Yep.
oh
Yep.
man, Bernard is shaking in his boots.
And Barney, your reference reminds me the episode where there was thievery all over town. And I don't know if you suspected Chris or not at the time, but why, Chris? Why would you do this? Sometimes you do these things just to feel alive. That's Chris.
Yeah,
And this
same.
helps Chris feel alive. I thought they would fight when I first saw it. I really
Me
thought
too.
there'd be some
Me too.
skirmish. I was surprised when it didn't happen.
I know it almost sounded ridiculous when I made the comparison earlier about these two different examples in the episode of traditions, but like some traditions you do ask the question, do they need to continue? Like I know we have this pattern
Mm,
of behavior and relating and but does it have to keep being this way? And I think
mhm.
this is one of those where it's like, oh, maybe this Family Feud, the way we've been doing it, doesn't have to be this way. Do you remember what Bernard said that kind of diffuses the fight? He said he had some phrase where he pointed out something that kind of made the
Mm,
one brother kind of relent. And I don't know what
Yeah,
it was.
I forget how he said it exactly, but he's like, if you take this animosity away, like if you resolve it, if we resolve this conflict right here through fighting, then what do we have left?
hmm
And I think, was it the older brother? He's like, yeah, it's like you take away a wall that you've been leaning against your whole life.
Hmm.
And then Chris picks up on where Bernard was trying to lead the everyone's thinking. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
I like how they finish with, I still hate your guts, Stevens,
So they do keep the tradition going, but not in with the fight. Okay, okay. Thanks
I
for
don't want
helping.
to take away all the fun.
He's like right back at you, baby.
And the one brother, the one Miller brother, is still beside himself that this isn't happening.
Right,
We
right.
were not fighting.
The other
Get in the
three of
car,
you can
Tommy.
talk philosophy, and what there's nothing left afterwards. All right. Oh man, Jacob, you mentioned tradition, and that almost strikes me as, we have in this episode tradition and community, because the other tradition, the other side plot is the yearly dance contest,
Mhm.
which is a tradition in Sicily, um, and Barney, as you said, the most lines maybe for Marilyn. The only other episode I can think about with that many lines is when she took her trip. That was really a Marilyn
Ah,
episode,
mhm.
although a lot of it was just scenes shot in different places. So yeah, this is her speaking a lot.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like how it starts. It's very, very near the beginning of the episode, and there's a huge line coming out of Joel's office. And we're thinking, uh-oh, is it flu season? Is there
Yeah.
some pandemic? Is are we in big trouble here? And then Marilyn just goes, next, next,
Oh, and for our viewers, why is she turning away all these people as
Mm,
dance partners? Well, they don't move right
no.
as they walk up to me. Totally, Marilyn. Jacob, how did that feel to you?
That was fun. I liked seeing Marilyn in that position of just being an expert, and she has all these people vying to be her partner, and she'll just watch them a little bit. They do a few steps. Okay,
Hmm.
next. Thank you. Next. And like, yeah, she's sought after as a dance partner, and she can she
Yeah.
has the choice of any number of people. But I liked seeing her in that way. And then I like that you know when she's working with Holling, when she sees potential in him, he kind of gets excited about that, and he mentions that to Shelley. She sees potential, even though I don't know how to dance, just from my
Hmm.
motion, my movement.
Hmm.
She says I have potential to be really good, and even though that ultimately ends up making Shelley jealous, the more that Holling spends time with Marilyn, you can see his excitement just to be for somebody to see that potential in him and try to help him learn to cultivate that. And so I thought it was very fun. Sorry, it was unexpected for me, but I liked it. It was very fun. Yeah.
Do
What did you
do
think?
we get the impression that Holling had turned down Shelley's request to dance in the past? I Shelley said something like, "It seemed to me Holling always had two left feet." I don't know.
Mm. Yeah,
Just trying
good
to get the
point.
source, the real source
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
jealousy,
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Shelley's generally not the person to be jealous of
Hmm.
things. I,
Hmm.
I don't know. Speculation.
Yeah, I mean, we do see we know that he's outdoorsy and whatnot, and then there's an episode where we find out that he's not really into sports, and he kind of prefers talking about other things, like cooking shows and news and whatnot, and so yeah, maybe we do kind of get the impression sometimes that he's into more solitary activities, maybe more, less. We wouldn't expect him to be going out there dancing, and so I can imagine that probably a time or two that I'm remembering the episode where Shelley's husband comes and they're dancing together, and where Holling, that this would be a time for Holling to be unhappy with Shelley if she were dancing with someone, but I wonder if like Holling kind of, maybe we it's safe to assume that like he was never really into dancing. He probably put Shelley off if she wanted to dance, saying, "Oh, I'm just not a good dancer, whatnot." And so maybe that
Okay.
is like a residual thing. But I can't think of anything that we've had on screen up until now.
Okay.
Yeah. But I do like how Holling got accepted as a partner, pick up the pretzels, put them down, bend over, and then you'll do.
You'll do.
You'll do. Uh,
Yeah, I've
yeah.
been at pool, I realize, up here in Alaska. So
Yeah, you'll do. You'll do. But amazingly, he moves like an elk. Oh, Marilyn this. Oh, Marilyn says this. Marilyn says that.
Shelley certainly grabbed that one and took it to task.
Well, Wayne says I move like a cat, hungry cat.
Oh, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like there's several layers to Shelley's frustration because Holling is kind of dropping balls at the restaurant and she's doing work to keep things going. And then he's staying late. And so it's cutting into their time together. And then he has this enthusiasm where he's just talking and talking and talking about it. And it's something that they don't share. So she just can't share in
Yeah.
it with him. And then, like you said, Marilyn this, Marilyn that. Marilyn said Marilyn. And then Shelley just calls him out on that. Well, Marilyn, her response, well, if she says that, so, but
Yeah.
what did you think about the Marilyn's comment? Well, I've gone back to my original dance partner. And then when Shelley's kind of inquiring more, Marilyn's like, well, it's not about his movement, it's about his stillness. He doesn't have the right. I think that's what she said, the right stillness. And what do you think that means?
Well, it's a very good question, and the stillness bit certainly struck me. In dancing, there are the moves, and then there are the not moves. As a non-trained dancer, I'm speculating, but in those moments of holding a pose, he didn't cut it.
Hmm.
Bit simplistic, but that's where my head went at that moment. Plus,
Yeah,
they needed a reason to fire
yeah.
him.
Hmm. Yeah, I thought that, wow, this Marilyn really knows what she wants in a dance partner. And, and I remember, yeah, she said about the former partner, oh, he didn't want it enough, so she had to fire him. But then now he's back. Maybe he was jealous too, this dance partner, knowing that Marilyn had a new partner, and that maybe that reignited his fire. But and then a part of me always wondered if maybe Marilyn was just coming up with just any old reason, like she took Shelley's comment to heart, and she didn't want to be the one to make problems, make trouble with her real genuine friends, her real close friends. But and I wonder if that would be a you know cultural thing in a roundabout way, where everyone saves face to come up with a really acceptable, plausible reason for someone. But yeah, I mean, it's so neat. He has this stillness, he has, she taught him her silver dollar move, and he moves like an elk, but it's the stillness, there's just something missing, and that doesn't bother Shelley at all. She likes the way he moves too, and that's enough for her. And I like how everyone kind of, everyone ends up winning in the end with that. I like that.
I thought this was also Marilyn's episode for um, holding some power. She
Hmm.
loves saying firing, and it's not, that seems harsh in this particular circumstance, but it's definitely, you know. I want to add too before it flew from my mind. I loved how they showed virtually the entire dance sequence at the contest to show that Marilyn really does have the creds here for
Hmm.
dancing.
Hmm.
So often in TV, an actor doesn't have all the, for instance, playing a piano, we seldom see an actor's hands for good reason, those sort of, and she really,
Hmm.
obviously her partner was a trained professional
Yeah.
in many regards. They were great together.
Oh
Just
yeah.
great.
Yeah. And I like how Holling does say, "Oh, he's got nice stillness,"
Yeah, I'll give him that.
Yeah.
Ah, cool.
So the various storylines in this episode are showing us how different individuals navigate the different dynamics between traditions and the relationships that they have in community. And whether
Hmm.
it's a tradition of how you mourn, or a tradition of how you fight, or a tradition of how you dance, they're all trying to find their way through that, navigating their relationships with others and finding meaning. And I know that's a very general take, but maybe those are some of the common
Hmm.
threads that were
Yeah,
emerging. Yeah.
nicely spoken. Have either of you
Hmm.
ever seen video or in person a Kaddish? Okay, just curious. Hmm.
Yeah. Any final comments or highlights from the show or whatnot to share before we get this wrapped up today?
Just really enjoyed
Great
this
fun.
episode. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
great fun and meaningful.
Hmm. Yeah, this really makes me think what a show, what a really valuable show that in one episode, they give us lots to laugh about and enjoy and memorable lines and uh, you know, you know, plot twists and turns that we were unexpected, but also at the same time is very meaningful and really fills us with knowing a little bit more about ourselves and knowing more about the characters and connecting with them in a way and it does it such a unique way and a really wide variety of tools that they use for that and it's just this episode is I think one of the things you could point to as to why it's a great TV series I think and
Mhm.
I really appreciated that and um for everyone listening along with us. If you haven't had the chance to see this episode, we really recommend you tune in somehow. I
Mhm.
myself, I recently got a region living in Japan. I got a region-free DVD player, and so now I can watch them, on the TV instead of on the PC as I was doing before. But and then they're also finally available streaming too. I think we mentioned
Yes.
that before. So yeah. But as always, with the it's just so nice having Ken back with us, for
Yes.
today's episode.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, really great.
I'm
Yeah.
very grateful, guys. Very grateful.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we are glad to have all of you watching along and listening to us wherever you may be. And we hope that as much as we are, you also are looking forward to the next episode. And for the Two World Podcast today with Ken and Jacob, I am Barney, and we will see you all again next time.